Hello, and welcome to Oregon Business Matters, a podcast by Oregon Business and Industry, your statewide Chamber of Commerce. I'm Angela Wilhelms, President and CEO of OBI, and your host here at Oregon Business Matters. Today, we're going to do something a little different. Rather than having a conversation with a guest, which we will be back to in the upcoming episodes, we are going to play for you a recording of some comments from OBI's 2025 annual meeting this June held in Salem. We thought it was important to share these remarks with even more people than could attend the event. So thank you for indulging me as we share those comments with you. Here you go. Thank you everyone for being here today. This is OBI's annual meeting. And it's great to have a good group of people here supporting our work and talking about important issues and activities that we're facing. OBI's mission is to strengthen Oregon's economy in order to achieve a healthy, prosperous, and competitive Oregon for the benefit of present and future generations. We take this role very seriously, and we engage in the advocacy, the research, the education, and the action necessary to make a difference. So let's talk today about why that's important, perhaps more important than ever. A robust, healthy, and growing private sector is necessary to the well-being of Oregonians, their communities, and this state's future. Businesses provide jobs and wages, philanthropy and community support, and ultimately, they generate all of the economic activity that leads to tax revenue to fund government services. Yet, as we note in OBI's Oregon competitiveness agenda, this state's political culture consistently undervalues the role of the private sector. The state also creates unnecessary obstacles to seizing opportunity, and because of many factors, including state policy, Oregon has become an expensive state in which to live and operate a business. These aren't theories. Reports after reports, even several reports issued in just the last year, back this up. CNBC's widely touted Top States for Business report last year dropped Oregon precipitously. We're now 28th, down 11 places since just 2017. And in that overall mediocre ranking, Oregon is an abysmal 48th for business friendliness. Ernst & Young's biennial tax burden report issued last fall shows that Oregon's state effective business tax burden rose 33% between 2019 and 2023. That is a 1/3 increase in just 4 years. And that's the same often cited report that shows how Portland is the highest tax city in the nation for those making between $125,000 and $25 million. Business Oregon, the state's own business development department, issued a report in April of this year that discusses the push and pull factors leading to business expansion outside of Oregon. The report, conducted by the University of Oregon's Institute for Policy, Research, and Engagement, IPRE, states, IPRE's research clearly shows that Oregon is losing businesses and private investment. The data suggests that this loss is significant enough to be of concern to Oregon residents and policymakers, end quote. Well, the Oregonians I talk to feel this, they understand this, and they are indeed concerned about it. The question is, are our political leaders? Let's keep going. A regulatory impact analysis by Strat Acumen will be released on June 9, showing that Oregon is the 7th most regulated state in the country. And the report notes that if we continue at our current pace, we will double the number of regulations in Oregon in only 11 years. Given that each 10% increase in regulatory restraint measurably decreases jobs, reduces GDP growth, and increases consumer prices, this trend is troubling. And in the most recent economic and revenue forecast, the state's own Office of Economic Analysis noted that Oregon's revenue outlook, quote, exhibits a significant slowdown in income growth for individuals and an outright decline in business income in 2025, end quote. It further notes that Oregon GDP growth is significantly lagging national GDP growth. And remember, revenue in Oregon is a direct function of business and personal income. I actually want to pause here and take a side note. Especially in this economic and revenue forecast, the data in these reports is from before the current presidential administration took office. So as much as some state leaders like to blame federal policy for our current economic troubles, and to be clear, we at OBI certainly believe that some federal actions are not helping Oregon's traded sector economy. But I want to be clear, this redirection of blame is a red herring. It ignores the state's own laws and regulations, the state's own decisions, the state's own role, and the state's own treatment of businesses that has led us to the data shared. So, given all this, it's no wonder then that Census Bureau data shows Oregon in the bottom half of job creation from January 2024 to January 2025, and darn close to or at the very bottom in some categories for every major sector of employment except for two, healthcare and government, both of which, by the way, require a healthy private sector to pay for them. There are many more reports and examples, but I'm going to stop here because we have an entire program to get to, but you get the idea. You actually knew the idea before you showed up today. But far too many people don't get it, or they don't want to get it. That is why our work at OBI to create a healthier, prosperous, and competitive Oregon is so important. And again, probably more important now than ever. Oregon is quickly falling behind other states. Frankly, it's embarrassing when I sit in a room of peers as we review these national statistics. There is no reason why Oregon shouldn't be a beacon of economic opportunity, a place where people flock. We have so many inherent advantages. We have so much talent. And we used to be that place. We can be once again. But we need to take a few things very seriously to regain that status. First, we must acknowledge, accept, and address these challenges, not ignore them or pretend that they're someone else's fault. Inconvenient and uncomfortable as it may be for policymakers to hear, we at OBI will not stop calling balls and strikes about what's good or bad for our state's economy. It's foolish to think that simply not talking about it will mask the issues, let alone help recovery. Second, state leaders must establish economic development as a true policy priority. This means the governor, each of her agencies, the legislature, and all of our statewide elected officials. At OBI, we've called this the fourth goal, the new goal added to the governor's existing three. We don't actually care what you call it. It just needs to be a stated, focused, and acted upon priority. And finally, third, we need to do no more harm. Listen to the business community. We are a data-driven group of problem solvers. Yet just hours ago, the Oregon House voted on a bill that was opposed by every type of employer, public and private, by chambers and small businesses, by large businesses and trade associations, by local governments, by school boards, by economic development groups and professionals across the state. Separately, the legislature has passed a bill that holds good actors, individuals, and companies liable for the bad actions of others. Things acknowledged to be unconstitutional get yes votes. This Friday, the Budget Committee is going to adopt a budget for Business Oregon that zeroes out useful programs and includes no significant investments in truly catalyzing a statewide economic development plan. Waiting in purgatory are common sense bills that cost very little or nothing at all and accomplish things regional economic development offices, ports, and communities across the state are begging for. And this is all at the end of a session where countless leaders talk about how much they want to support small business, grow the economy, and keep prices low for Oregonians. At the same time, when we need to send an Oregon is open for business bat signal, we are doing just the opposite. But today is not a legislative update. There are 25 days left to see what else ultimately passes or doesn't. And as always, we will provide a complete recap after the session. I wanted to offer these nuggets today, not to just dampen the mood, but as illustrations of the disconnect between what's happening in the Capitol and the economic reality we face, and between what's happening in the Capitol and what the public wants to see. We surveyed Oregonians in February and again in April. In April, the governor's job approval rating was 43% approve to 56% disapprove, a wider margin than the 43 to 48 gap in February. In fact, her job approval rating is actually basically the same as President Trump's in Oregon, 43% approve and 57% disapprove instead of the 56 for her. Of course, there's obviously some partisanship factoring in there and in those numbers, but that alone does not account for the disapproval figures or the growing gap. We also asked those voters whether they're concerned that Oregon's Democratic leaders' policies will hurt the economy. To be clear, that was not a partisan question. It was just simply about who is in control of setting policy for the state. In February, 53% were concerned. By April, this jumped to 60%. And again, that was about the actions of state leaders and whether state policy was going to harm the economy. The message from all of this is clear. We must do things differently. The OBI competitiveness agenda offers a host of solutions, some big, some small, to help chart a new path. And we are always ready to work with legislative and executive branch partners who want to restore our competitiveness, and we are grateful for those who have stepped up to do that this very session so far. And we remain ready to work with those who want to rebuild our state's economic health and create a more prosperous Oregon for everyone. We're hopeful that the right tables will be set to advance regulatory modernization, economic development, and other efforts that utilize our state's rich talent for innovation, problem solving, and entrepreneurship to reclaim our place as a destination for workers, businesses, capital investment, and the resulting economic prosperity those things will bring. And while this has been fairly sobering, we're also going to continue to do the fun work to celebrate industry throughout the year. We'll continue to celebrate our makers and manufacturers with the coolest thing made in Oregon. By the way, nominations are now open, so please go online and submit your favorite product. And we'll have our Manufacturing and Innovation Roadshow. We'll focus on entrepreneurship and how to support that ecosystem at our Fall Vision Oregon event. We'll release more research, more policy ideas, yes, even more podcasts as we continue to use data and facts to tell the story of the amazing work happening in businesses across the state and happening because of the amazing workers at those companies. And overall, to tell the story of the critical role our private sector enterprises play. We look forward to doing all of that in partnership with you and anyone else who wants to join us. And with that, I want to pivot to one of the extraordinary opportunities we have before us. As I've said before, Oregon has a number of extraordinary advantages that should allow us to be a national, if not global, leader in so many areas. And we talk a lot about the need for more robust economic development. A lot. To us, economic development is really a combination of both business development and community development. And today we'll focus on part of our economy that represents all of this. Sports tourism and recreation encapsulates activity that is embedded in so many Oregonians' daily lives, from hiking, skiing, mountain biking, and fishing, to participating in or watching youth, college, or professional sports. Not only are sports and recreation part of so many households and communities, they also represent community and business development. This is an extraordinary example of that symbiotic relationship between public and private sectors. Teams at all levels and recreational service providers rely on a healthy private sector for ticket sales, philanthropy sponsorship, and public services. The private sector relies on sports tourism and recreation, both for direct jobs, but also for the quality of life necessary to retain and recruit workers and their families. So we are very excited to bring this topic to the forefront of today's event and to help champion Oregon's sports tourism and recreation economy. This has been a production of Oregon Business Matters, brought to you by OBI, the statewide Chamber of Commerce. To learn more about OBI, visit OregonBusinessIndustry.com, and to subscribe to Oregon Business Matters, visit your favorite podcast platform.